if you are an MSP or a modern work or infrastructure partner, you need to start thinking about business outcomes more in business conversations with C-suites around, talk to the CFO, talk to the leaders of the sales teams and really understand what their actual challenges are. Get the technology for a minute, but what are their actual challenges day to day? And then you can kind of piece in where the tech can really help.
Behind every Microsoft partner is a story of growth, a story of ambition, and a story of people pushing themselves, their businesses, and technology further. Every week here on Microsoft Mentors, the podcast, I speak to business, technology, and thought leaders from across the Microsoft partner ecosystem, offering mentorship at scale to the Microsoft partner community. So let's dive into this week's episode of Microsoft Mentors, the podcast. Hello and welcome to another episode of Microsoft Mentors, the podcast. And today I am joined by Rob Young. How you doing, Rob?
Hey, Ollie. Yeah, nice to see you.
For anyone, I guess, that doesn't know you, Rob, it'd be good if you could just give everyone a quick 30-second top down of who you are and what you do in the Microsoft world, mate, if that's all right.
No problem. My name's Rob Young. I'm CEO here at Infinity Group, which I founded along with my partner about 25 years ago. As an MSP, we started, and then we kind of moved into the other areas of Microsoft. That's us.
And it's been a busy few months for you guys, and that all sort of culminating in winning one of the global Microsoft Partner of the Year awards. So which award did you get? And give us a bit of an idea of what that journey looked like over the last few months to get that, Rob.
Yeah, so it's probably not the last few months. It's kind of a culmination, really, of quite a long journey. Obviously, 25 years ago we founded, but back in 2017, I think it was, I went to Inspire out in Washington, and that kind of gave me the impetus to really kind of focus and double down on Microsoft. And then we kind of a year or two after that, we decided to go pure play Microsoft, and then a few years ago, we were relative nobody within that Microsoft ecosystem. We rebranded with the focus of kind of becoming somebody in that world. So we became managed. We then became Inner Circle. We got finalists in Business Central last year, and then finally we won it. We won it this year. So yeah, it is a crazy few months because we've known probably for 4 or 5 months now, but only got told. We could only tell anyone sort of a couple of months ago. But yeah, it's a culmination of all that stuff, and it's been great.
Yeah, no, and congratulations. It's there's a lot of tough competition out there. I think whenever you look at the numbers of Microsoft partners and whichever metric you look at, there's always loads, right?
Yeah.
Whether it's if you're just looking within one solution designation or across anyone that's got Microsoft partner status, it's always 4 digits or more, and quite scary sometimes. So to be to be acknowledged in a global market like that is a testament to you and the team. We'll dive into your background a little bit more, but just wanted to pick up on something that you mentioned there. So you obviously started out, by the sounds of it, as more of an MSP, and then made that decision to start transitioning to be closer to Microsoft, ultimately going to be in sort of pure play Microsoft. During that journey, was there, or I imagine there were probably quite hard choices that you had to make in terms of, do we drop this legacy customer? Do we, stop investing in these types of skills in our team and invest in here? How did those sort of decisions go? Because I guess they were quite tough when you've had a legacy business that's got you to where you got to.
Yeah, do you know? I think that one of the key turning points for me was actually back in probably about 2010, 2011. We actually lost a customer, and we were selling like hosted Exchange back then. If I remember, it was just like a mailbox basically. Microsoft had a pre-Microsoft 365, they had productivity or something or other. Office 365 came in about 2010, 2011, and a customer came to me and said, "Oh, we want this Office 365." I said, "No, you don't want that. This is much more cost effective. Stay with this kind of online mailbox." And the customer went with the Microsoft, and it was because already then they were building out the elements of that product and the features of that product. So it wasn't just the mailbox; it was the productivity tools, etc., etc., etc. So that was a bit of an eye opener for me around having just a mailbox and the type of investments that versus the type of investments that Microsoft can make to really put their weight behind the products and the various ecosystems that they've gone after over the years. So yeah, that was a massive eye opener for us.
Yeah, definitely. And if we rewind the clock sort of back to your pre-Infinity days, even your pre-working days, Rob, has technology always been a passion, part of your life? Did that come in later in life? What did that look like for you in the early years?
Yeah, I mean, back in my day, it was we used to have one computer in school. So, like when I was in primary school, there was one computer that we all got around. I think it was a BBC. So we didn't really get much chance to play with it there. And then when I went to secondary school, we had classrooms where you had computers. So you maybe had 5 or 6 computers in a classroom. Windows was just about there. They were trying to get you to code in like DOS and BASIC and things like this. But I started working part-time for a company that was starting to explore computers. So I was working weekends and then eventually after school. And we were just learning on the job through trial and error. We were building computers, we were building networks. We were installing things like NetWare and Windows for Workgroups and latterly NT. So I was kind of, I suppose, an engineer, network engineer back in the day. But yeah, that's kind of where it was just curiosity really in the early days, and it evolved from there.
Yeah. And what's really funny is that, so you started Infinity Group in 2001, right?
Yeah.
So this is now the third conversation in a row on Microsoft Mentors where the business or the person has started in 2001.
Right.
I got you. I spoke to a guy called Mick Patel, who will be coming out in season 3. He founded an MSP called Netstar in 2001. And then I also had a conversation with Ian Williamson, who's the cloud practice director at Intelligy, and he started at Intelligy in 2001. So it seems to be this weird thread.
I don't know what's going on in 2001.
Maybe post and sort of year 2000, all of the Y2K worrying, and everyone was like, do you know what? We need to go and have a good MSP. But what was for you then, and you and your partner when you set up? What did that look like in terms of, if we were there in the 4 walls in the first year or two? What sort of stuff were you doing? What sort of customers were working with? Give us a bit of a feel for what that all looked like.
So we were dealing with everyone and anyone in between. So literally anyone that wanted to deal with computers. There was no kind of strategy behind who we were working with. But predominantly small businesses, because the large businesses wanted to work with larger organisations. So we knew. I mean, I was doing sort of contracting bits, consultancy bits, but we knew that to grow a managed service, we needed to have a team that was kind of always on, or at least on during office hours. So that was kind of the initial investment. We were, as I say, installing networks, installing servers, installing mail servers, and just kind of keeping the lights on, which I think if you think about where we are now and, 20, 25 years on, back then, networks didn't work. Computers really didn't work. You're like opening the things up and changing pieces of RAM over and stuff to stop the thing blue screening. And so, it just the fundamentals was a struggle. And then obviously you then had to get the network software working, which was hugely in its infancy back then. And then the application software on top of that. So if you think about back then, you're just trying to get the infrastructure working. You then went kind of through this cloud transformation in the 2010s onwards with M365 and latterly Azure and AWS and all those kinds of providers. And then all of a sudden, you've got that infrastructure as a service where you're not actually looking after the hardware so much. You're just looking after the infrastructure. And during that time, obviously, connectivity, like with broadband, lease lines, the cost of those were coming down. The reliability was getting better. Because that was often the problem, they had these cloud solutions or these mailboxes. But actually, a lot of businesses were, semi-rural and they just didn't have the connectivity to support it. So, the connectivity and the infrastructure and the networking caught up. And And then you kind of had this cloud revolution where everyone kind of moved their servers and infrastructure to the cloud. And then now that's done, it's kind of like modernizing that infrastructure. Security is a big thing. And then obviously that was where we started looking at applications as well, that application layer, what's going on top of that.
Yeah. And I guess with every sort of paradigm shift in the technology world, as a business owner and leader, you've got to pivot your business model in line with that as well, right?
Yeah.
Where were the big sort of inflection points, do you think, across the last 25 years? What do you think have been the technological changes that have had the biggest impact in Infinity Group's direction?
Yeah. So certainly that kind of cloud shift, that from that first customer that we lost, I'm like, had to sort of wake up and go, actually, Microsoft's a proper player here, and we need to really
Yeah.
start thinking about this. So I guess that was a wake up call for us. To when we decided to set up a CRM practice in 2013, that was a big shift in a different direction for us. Kind of going from infrastructure across to the application layer and trying to solve those front office challenges. I think when we look at CRM and also the ERP, the Business Central, which we just won the award for, the big shift for those is when they went SaaS. So D365 was probably 2016 to 2018, and Business Central really kind of 2019 onwards. When they became SaaS and we didn't have to worry so much about the infrastructure they were sat on, and the code, well, we had to write so much code to get the system to do what we needed to do that we were managing all these different things. And when you're small, it's really, really difficult to then scale. But the SaaS and the more configurable the applications became within the actual package, the easier it was to then scale those solutions. But they're all completely different. And, the delivery methodology for delivering infrastructure and security is completely different from CRM, which again is completely different from ERP. So they've been really steep learning curves as we've grown, got to a point where we're like, we've got all these customers, how are we going to support them and how are we going to manage that growth? We've then really had to take a step back, think about how we're delivering, think about methodologies, bring in people, bring in tooling to help them grow again.
Yeah. And how have you sort of kept up with that change? Because obviously you come from that sort of network infrastructure type world, and then the business has evolved and pushed you, as a leader, more into that dynamics world. So I guess how did you find sort of stepping into that new technology landscape?
I mean, I guess I'm naturally curious. I wouldn't say I'm a massive techie anymore, but I understand the fundamentals. So, I understand the fundamentals of how things work. And over those years, obviously, I've gained an experience as a business owner as well, and the challenges that throws up on a day-to-day basis. So I guess there's a combination there, but it's also just surrounding yourself with good people. So our CTO that came in, set up the CRM business in 2013, he's got a great foresight and insight across that whole Microsoft stack, really understands how these technologies sort of, fit together.
Yeah. And is there a big difference in terms of you mentioned there about sort of delivery models, but in terms of like engaging in that dynamics world versus the sort of more MSP infrastructure type world? Because I know there's some big players in the dynamic space. Big four consultancies are wanting to play in that world. MSPs are wanting to, or infrastructure or global systems integrators are playing in that world. So I guess how did entering that market differ from the markets that you've lived in before?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I said at the beginning, and I think you mentioned it before, did you have to cut off some customers? And yes, we did. We divested a bunch of our old sort of small customers about 2 years ago. And yes, when you're looking at business applications, specifically CRM, but it also applies to ERP as well, you kind of have to get your customer size as well. So the ideal customer profile. Also, those products suit certain markets. So there's a kind of vertical alignment there. So you kind of all of a sudden you're condensing your specialities there. So yes, you are dealing with system integrators and some of those big four companies, but actually, when we came into the market with Business Central, which was 2001, there was a big shift. There was a lot of M&A going on, and a lot of our competition, or what would have been competition, actually moved up into the enterprise space. So Incremental got acquired by Telefonica, and Quantic got acquired by Avanade, and that left a gap in the mid market. So kind of we sit now in that upper SMB and mid market space, and yeah, there's obviously players and top four companies that are not top four, but the big four accounting firms and stuff that are trying to get into that space. But we've kind of we've kind of carved a little niche in there, and specifically in the few verticals that we operate in.
Yeah, cool. And a big part of your success story, by the sounds of it, and obviously that all culminating this year in the award is that Microsoft relationship. It sounds like you went from sort of a fairly uninvolved relationship with Microsoft through to now being in a circle and an award winner. So what does that journey look like for a partner? Let's say there's other MSP owners out there that are a bit more generalist. They're maybe thinking of going down that pure play Microsoft route. They know there's this this song and dance that you've got to do with Microsoft as a vendor to get yourself certain statuses. How's that sort of journey matured for you guys?
So people do talk about it, and they call it the Microsoft tax, right? So as a business, you have to look at it holistically. Like back in the day, we could have carried on selling. Mailboxes, made more money, but actually in the background there, Microsoft, although you're making less money on the transaction, Microsoft is growing, and they're really going to invest in that area. So we knew that they were going to be the partner we wanted to partner with. We knew that if the sellers and the folk at Microsoft really, want to believe in us, then we've got to be all in. Like we've got to be all in across the stack. So that's Azure, that's security, that's the whole thing. And we've seen over the last 20, 30, 40 years since Microsoft have existed, the way that they've kind of gone into a market and then ended up dominating it. So they've done that in the desktop, they've done that in the kind of cloud environment where they're kind of massively catching up with AWS now, and they've done that in security, and they're in all those areas. They're sat kind of Gartner top right. It's the same with CRM, same with ERP. So that they're going to put the weight behind them. So that was a decision. That was a conscious decision. We're going to go all in with them. You also need to understand, what they're doing as an organisation, how they're evolving, and buy into what their vision, because often they'll talk about things in the future, and you have to really kind of try and work alongside them in those. So obviously agents is a thing at the moment. We've got a big push to get agents into our client base, and that's kind of aligning to what they want to do, and then just building relationships. We kind of knew if we wanted to go to Microsoft and we wanted to become managed, we knew we weren't going to do it as an infrastructure or modern work partner. Or, maybe if you were a niche security player, you could do it. But there's so many, managed service and modern work partners out there that we knew that we had to have something slightly different. And BizApps was that differentiator for us. And like I say, with the amalgamation of those bigger organizations, there was a gap in their kind of managed book, which was we haven't got enough BizApps partners that are going to sit in this mid-market. All of a sudden we got a problem. So we kind of, it was a bit of good timing as well as everything else. We kind of got into that managed space, and then you've just got to spend a lot of time with them and understand the way that they're structured, because they're structured in a way that, I still to this day don't always understand.
And it changes every financial year, moves around, and there's different goalposts to hit.
Exactly. The funding changes, the structure changes, the goals change, people move around. So trying to understand that is quite an art. But you build relationships over that time, and at the end of the day, if you can be trusted, and I'm proud of our record with our customers, that we've never had a problem or anything that's been escalated to Microsoft, because we've always managed those projects and those customers in the right way. So just building that up and making sure that they're not getting loads of noise, or you're not creating loads of noise within that Microsoft world, moaning or whatever it is. You've
Yeah,
got to
yeah.
play the game right, and that's the Microsoft tax, and I think that's what people mean by that Microsoft tax. We've also spent a lot of time and effort in marketing. So we've, a few years ago with the rebrand, we heavily invested in our marketing team, and probably certainly in the early days it was much bigger investment than a business of our size would make, but it's allowed us to do lots of really cool things with our go-to-market teams, and it's helped us get into people at Corp. So you've got obviously the local UK folk in Microsoft that are based predominantly now in 2KS, but you've also got the folk in Corp that look after the product, and they have lots of funding around marketing initiatives and product initiatives. So getting close to them is really good because you get the latest track on the products and the solutions that are coming, but also you can work with them on some really cool marketing stuff. And we've managed to do that by having quite a cool marketing team that are quite agile and can be quite disruptive.
Yeah, yeah. No, I really like your brand and style. It's almost like, was it like 1990s Game Boy kind of style,
Yeah,
isn't it? A lot of
yeah.
it, and it
When,
definitely cuts through the noise, doesn't it?
well, our CMO, he came in, and like the first job I said to Chris was, "We've got to rebrand. We've got to. This is the goal. This is what we need to do." And he went off and he spoke to an agency that he used before, and we sat down and he's like, got all these things. We did these strategy meetings and things, and off they come. And they sat in this room, and I remember it. I was sat there with Chris and these people, and they're all around there, and they've got like the board, they had board thing, and they're going through this
Yeah,
thing,
yeah.
and it's like stereotypical Microsoft partner, blah 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 blah. And then this one came up, and I was like, you are having a laugh. I literally thought they were taking the piss, and they were like, no, this is the one, and yeah. So we went through it, and actually the way they demonstrated it and played it out made a whole lot of sense because we wanted to, like I say, at the time we needed to disrupt Microsoft, we needed to stand out, we needed to attract talent because again we were a smaller partner, and we were trying to recruit people, and they were often taking a chance on us because we were relatively unknown, and also we were obviously trying to attract clients at the same time. So we had to, although it needed to be disruptive and fun, it also needed to be quite serious when it needed to be as well. So there's different ways that we present the brand that allows us to cover all those areas.
Yeah, yeah. I think there's always a fine line, isn't there? Because I can see you sat in the room going, "Is that really going to work? Have you guys actually lost your minds?"
Yeah,
But then actually, when you see it out in the wild, it's one of those where it is such a unique brand. It does a good job of sort of telling the story, and I think from the stuff that I've seen, it's quite a dynamic brand in that way because you can articulate lots of different sort of topics and thoughts with it in different ways that isn't, like
yeah,
you say, just that stereotypical Microsoft partner type style. I remember years ago, Visual down at Future Decoded,
yeah. No,
they used to do something really similar where they'd have big graffiti stands at Future Decoded and
yeah,
umbrellas everywhere and stuff. And when you put that next to just a really clean cut KPMG
yeah,
stand with a blue KPMG logo, which one's sort
yeah,
of more appealing to go and look at and talk to? So no, it's definitely a good tactic. And I guess that's one of the things, isn't it? When you grow and develop a business, you've obviously come from a technology background, but
yeah,
you become embedded in sales processes, marketing,
yeah.
technical, operations. It's like all of these different hats. Every meeting that you go into, you've got to put on your different type of hat. How do you deal with that side of sort of running the business?
Um, yeah. I mean, what's great is as you kind of grow and everything else, you bring in different people and you bring in different talent who've got different perspective on things. So that's been really good. But yeah, I mean, it's all part of growing a business, and I think that's why certainly when we've done our customer zero journey, for instance, where we've deployed our own we've deployed Dynamics and Business Central and agents within our own platform over the last few
Yeah,
years, doing that in every single area of the business. So everyone in the business uses Dynamics. has been a real eye opener, because we're using this stuff, we're going through the same pain that our customers are, we're having the same challenges of data and security, the same conversations. So yeah, dealing with different areas of business, I think, if you've been in growing your business over a long period of time, you just end up doing that, and that becomes part of your DNA, I suppose.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, it's interesting what you say about that customer zero journey. I think that's something that Microsoft's a massive advocates for, aren't they? And it's sort of build and discover and understand what these technologies look like in a business, and that business is your business as you're running it. And then, as a partner, you then unpick all of the little nuances of a technology stack, and then you're able to go and have more real world conversations with your customers about it, aren't you? Because you're on the same journey as them at certain points.
Absolutely, and that's what I've been. When I was out at Ignite, I was talking with Microsoft. That's what they want me to talk about is our journey, because they want other partners to do the same thing. And again, that's an investment that we've had to make in the business, which did we need to make it? Did we not need to make it? That's questionable. But it's been great. It's been a tough journey. Don't get me wrong, because there is a lot of stuff that you have to do, as I said before, that's just like normal kind of housekeeping stuff. It's really boring, like sorting your data out and just manual, horrible, heavy lifting. But actually doing it, as you say, when you speak to a customer, you can go, well, you're gonna have to do that bit. Unfortunately, that's going to be you, and you've got to dedicate X amount of time to get that sorted out. So yeah, it's been really interesting, and that's been part of our Partner of the Year application. So that, along with our marketing team, along with that customer zero journey, as well as some customer kind of case studies, was all part of that journey. And obviously this year, in all those events, they're talking about customer zero, frontier firm, da 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 da. So and the thing is, with all your Microsoft partners that are out there, you all get internal use rights for this stuff. And the more badges you get, so the more solution designations, the more advanced specializations, the more licensing you get. And most partners don't use their D365 or their Business Central licensing, so it's there. And it's enterprise platform stuff. It's comparable with Salesforce and SAP and NetSuite, all that. Those types of products that lots of partners use. Yeah. Got it in the kit box, so you may as well make the most of it.
Yeah, like you say, I think it's probably the pain of doing it, isn't it? Right, which is if you've got a solution that's in place and working, it's difficult to justify doing it for yourselves, where you could be, feel like you're doing it externally. But yeah, I can see, you can almost see that sort of the conversation of you got two consultants. You've got one consultant that hasn't done it as a customer zero journey, and they're out talking to a customer about the data side of things, and going through the motions because they know they need to, and that's the step they need to get to the customer. But what are they basing that on, other than sort of wider experience, where you've got someone that's been through that journey as part of your program as customer zero, and go, no, look, Dave, we had to sit and we had to spend 2 weeks mapping out our data governance process to get to this next stage, and that's realistically what it's going to take. We've been there. I'm telling you, that's what this is going to probably look like for you as a business. And I think that trust and credibility that you're able to then build with a customer is massive, isn't it?
Yeah, absolutely. And this is kind of the vision of us, Infinity, as an organisation, was, listen, if we can deliver the infrastructure, so we can get people into a modernised cloud environment, if we can then layer the front office and back office with D365 and BC, and then layer over that security piece. Actually, now we're in a world of AI. We can go into one pane of glass. We can ask, Copilot, for instance, the Copilot app. They've now got integration into the Dataverse within that app. I can ask about tickets. I can ask about projects. I can ask about my field engineers. I can ask about sales opportunities. And it's going to give me more contextual answers because it's got more data immediately. And then on top of the D365 and BC, Microsoft are building out agents, really, really good agents to solve specific problems. So I'm not having to use an external provider to then build additional stuff. It's a lot quicker to then develop on that platform. So actually, although we knew we wanted an ERP system and a CRM system, but where we've got to now, we've got all that data in one platform, and it's it's really, really beneficial in the context of AI and Copilot.
Yeah, and is that what you're seeing then? So Microsoft are getting to a point where they're starting to now push, off the shelf agents for typical workflows. So, HR team need to access X and Y from, certain system integrated through certain data source, and actually as an end user, you can just pick that off the shelf and put it into your environment with some tweaking to do a job.
Yeah, so sales, for instance, they've got about 10 agents. They've got a qualification agent. So it will automatically liaise with your customer, check whether they're the ideal customer profile, to and fro with them communication-wise, and then qualify to a certain point and then hand off. They've got a researcher agent, which aligns with things like MedPick, on the lead qualification piece to make sure the sellers identified those key elements that they need to. They've got within customer service, you've got the knowledge base that you put in. It will basically match the knowledge base articles with the problems that are coming through, but it'll also identify repeatable problems and then build the knowledge base for you and then say to you, there's an great article here. So it's almost self-fixing or self-correcting itself. Contact center is going to be massive. They've got that, and that sits on top of customer service, which we're going to be deploying early next year. And that allows voice to voice, like just natural voice in any language. And then we'll integrate with those cases. So you can ask, a question about your system, or you can relay a problem, and it can either triage you to an engineer, or it can actually self-serve you before that by giving you the answer out of the knowledge base. So I think that kind of CX piece, Microsoft have got 7,000 engineers working on that. That's a really interesting piece that they're obviously seeing as a huge opportunity for AI transformation.
Yeah, because I've seen a few big customers that I know in the space on that sort of Dynamics 365 contact center piece, and for them, because they are high call volume type businesses where they've got lots of agents on calls, and probably thousands and thousands per day, to be able to contextualize that information off those calls and then feed that into the wider system, which is already built on D365, and be able to then manipulate that through Copilot and agents is for them like the biggest opportunity really for them as a business, because most of their data sets coming in through calls that are happening on the phone every day with customers.
Yeah. And just think, you'll be in your Copilot and you can say, XYZ company, can you just give me a rundown of the last 6 months? Are they happy? Are they not? Because it's got, it can tell, whether customers are happy or not on phone calls, and it can see all of the interactions on emails and Teams and everything else, and bring all that data together along with sales data, opportunity data, and project data, and actually give you a full picture of where the customer's at. And so that's, for me, the power of one ecosystem working together.
Yeah. And obviously at the start of the year as well with Microsoft, they had a little bit of a reshuffle with how they have built their solution areas, and brought what was modern work and biz apps together under one umbrella of AI business solutions. I guess. Yeah. Is there much change from your side as a partner with that happening, or is it mainly just a title change for now? Has there been any impact?
Yeah, listen, there's been a lot of disruption in Microsoft globally and also in the UK, and I think they're just trying to get their heads around what that structure looks like still. But I think it does make a lot of sense if you think, just as us as on a journey, bringing those technologies together is really powerful. What's the key elements of successful AI adoption and creation of agents, and it is getting that data piece sorted, getting the security sorted. So that infrastructure is really, really important, as well as obviously the line of business applications as well. So bringing those two together definitely makes sense, because there should be one conversation going on. So yeah, you're seeing that they're targeted to push Copilot. They see it as an arms race over the next year or so, and and there's a lot of competition in that area, and it's interesting to see how that plays out. But Microsoft is very much, listen, we're kind of LLM agnostic. We'll work with Claude, and it works with Grok as well, and these different providers. But yeah, it's about, they're saying it's about securing the socket at the moment, which is the actual interface itself. So it'd be interesting to see how it plays out.
And that's the thing, isn't it? It's I think if you look at how a lot of these arms races has happened in the past, and maybe Microsoft in the past have had a different approach of maybe blocking the outsiders, and then actually in the end having to revert back and sort of draw back and open up a little bit more. It does feel like more this time they're going, do what you want on the back end, but as long as it's coming through Copilot and linking into everything else, then that's what we want from you. So yeah, it'll be interesting, and you could go on for hours in terms of what the impacts and the opportunities are with the AI space. It's just I think it's another inflection point that we just have to understand where the opportunities and where the growth area is. The same as, like you say, when Office 365 came out and you were running hosted Exchange, or when Azure or AWS started taking market share, and big data center private hosted solutions were then degrading in terms of the value in the market. So it's going to be one of those shifts again, isn't it? Okay, it probably happens at a slightly faster pace, but it's just keeping a track of where they're going with it.
Yeah, and I think one of the big differences, and I think one of the big misconceptions is, people have been playing around with AI over the last 12, 18 months or whatever. And like all new technologies, they get a bit giddy, and they're like using technology for technology's sake. And at the end of the day, Copilot, AI, these large language models, it's just another tool, another business application, just like the others. And I think where businesses sometimes get a bit lost is they dive into the technology without actually not understanding the problem they're trying to solve. Yeah. And I think that's why Microsoft, another reason why they brought those areas together, they see the BizApps partners as being able to have those business conversations, whereas the modern work infrastructure partners traditionally have been much more transactional kind of engagements, and it's very kind of fixed. This is what this particular piece does. So, if you are an MSP or a modern work or infrastructure partner, you need to start thinking about business outcomes more, having business conversations with C-suites around, talk to the CFO, talk to the leaders of the sales teams, and really understand what their actual challenges are. Forget the technology for a minute, but what are their actual challenges day to day? And then you can kind of piece in where the tech can really help. And then you only got to find one little case study or one little area where you can solve a problem. And then, the customer's like, wow, well, we'll start investing in that area, because as a business owner, if you can save time, improve quality, reduce risk, then you're going to invest.
Yeah. It's that trap, isn't it? Of, generally it's always been technology, but especially with AI, I think it's heightened, which is we need to invest in AI because it's the next silver bullet for our business. Well, what are you trying to hit? What's your target? What's your actual objective? Because if you're just implementing stuff for AI's sake, and you know what, I'm as bad as anyone. I'll get suckered into every tool that I see on LinkedIn. I'm like, whoa, maybe there is an application for that in our business, and you start to go down a bit of a rabbit hole. Maybe you have a demo, or you do a free trial, and you go, actually, it's not. What was I trying to achieve by it? Like, it was just I got drawn in by the shiny tech rather than actually what I wanted it to be able to do for me.
And we've seen that. I mean, this is the scary thing. I think your big tech companies are fine, but they talk about this AI bubble. But I think there's a lot of startups that are solving a problem that's already fixable within a platform like Microsoft or Google or whatever. And so you kind of think, well, they're getting all this VC money and all this investment to solve a problem that's already been solved or can easily be solved with AI. And that's the thing, you can do things so quickly that it's infinitely, you can overtake those products pretty soon. But it's the most important thing is understanding your job role and your business and the processes you go through. You can do that and then learn about these tools and how you use them. Those two things together, and that's what we tell the team internally. A big part of our kind of customer zero journey has been the kind of transformation of the team internally to get people thinking around how can I, be more efficient at what I do? How can I elevate myself to be the kind of master of these agents or this particular intelligent automation piece? And then start thinking like that, and then thinking about learning and growing on the technology side to feel, because it's becoming a lot less democratized. The tools are a lot easier to use than they ever have been.
Yeah. We've touched on it a few times during the conversation about the growth of the teams and bringing in important people that have had big impacts in the business. You mentioned this CMO and what he did on the brand side of things, and the CTO and what they brought in on the sort of the dynamics and CRM side. How have you sort of gone about building and growing the team? What's your focus been around how you've built or how you build and maintain the culture? Is that something that's been strategic, or something that's sort of happened organically as the business has grown?
Yeah. So listen, we've all read lots of these kind of books, and there's been some really good ones that I've read in the past. One in particular that I always kind of go back to is a book by a guy called Dan Pink, and it's called Drive, and it's around three things that effectively drive or motivate people. He's a business psychologist type fella, and it's about autonomy, it's about purpose, and it's about mastery, they call it, very American, but learning and development effectively. So if you can provide an environment where people can learn and grow and develop, if you can give them a real purpose, in the sense that, it's about the values, it's about how you are as an organization, it's about what your goals are. The more specific you can be as an organization, the more purpose people can feel. If I'm after this business of this size in this area, we're pure play Microsoft. So that drives that purpose, and then the autonomy piece. People being able to have control, and this kind of goes back to a little bit back to COVID and remote working, and we're kind of in this world at the moment where I see that people do need to get together, but you don't want to go back to full-time working. So we have these conversations as a business. We talk about it openly. We've done like workshops around, what our values were and what they mean to us. And that all kind of, that's been kind of an evolution over the years. But it is always something that we talk about, and we always ask people. We have we use a tool to survey people almost every week. Not loads of questions, but just, things, that we monitor that score. That's the kind of the number one thing we talk about as a business at senior leadership team. And it is difficult. People have got busy lives. There's different generations of folk you have to kind of manage. So the whole people side has been an interesting journey, but it's been quite a nice one as well.
Yeah, interesting that you've got like a real clear metric there as well that you can measure and report on and look at. I think, like you said, the tendency or the vision that most people probably have of most SLT and board meetings, what the revenue numbers for this month and this quarter, are we on track for X, Y, and Z, which is obviously part of it. But to have a real clear metric where you can look at the variance in sort of employee engagement and happiness must be a really good metric to be able to bring into that, because then I guess probably lets you see things earlier than maybe you would do if you didn't see that.
Yeah, and it's difficult, right? Because you're not in an office where everyone's here all the time. We're sort of 100, 185 or so people spread all over the UK, and in fact over Europe, and we've even got people in Asia as well. So, it's hard to feel, like you kind of feel that business, what's going on, what the mood is. And so getting those teams together, either quarterly or monthly or bi-weekly, whatever it is, I think is really, really important. But the metrics equally, you measure those things, you see what people are feeling, and different times of the year, it kind of ebbs and flows a little bit. But it allows you to be quite open and transparent with the communication with your teams. And I think because we're privately owned as well, and as this is, it's not always been easy. Last year, 24 was an example when there was a lot of headwinds, there's a lot of uncertainty, change of governments, all that kind of stuff, and there was a lot of delay for the back half of that year. And we decided to double down on our customer zero journey. We didn't, we were carrying bench, and we were like, what do we do? But you see other firms that are, backed by different kinds of investors, and it is purely about the numbers. And there's goals and there's decisions made, and they're not necessarily communicated that well. Business slows down, leadership gets axed. All these different things that happen. I think often lead to bad decisions in the long term.
Yeah, it's an interesting one, isn't it? Because I think there's probably a thought in the public zeitgeist that everyone that starts a business is always running 100 miles an hour at this this point of exit, or this VC investment, or this private equity lump of cash to drop into the bank. But sometimes it is, be careful what you wish for, isn't it? Especially if you've had control and ownership. I think if you're going into that journey, and I've had conversations on the podcast with people that have been through that, sometimes it works really well, but there are very different dynamics that then come into the business that you have to deal with if you go through that journey.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know friends and who've got other businesses that have had amazing experiences. So I'm not saying it's the wrong or right answer. I just, when you go, you find out, I think, a lot about people and partners and stuff when you go through tough times, and you have to take a long-term vision. And, certainly with us and our journey, it's been, who are we, where are we going, what technologies are we doing, what problems are we trying to solve for our clients. And often when you're going into CRM, when you're going into BC, there's years when you're not making any money out of it, and you're just pouring money in to try and find out how it works and how you do monetize it. And so, it has to be a longer term vision. And sometimes there's drivers behind that mean it can't be long term. And then obviously once you get into your second or third deal, then the margins are squeezed. And the second investor or the third investor wants to make their bit of money, and it gets harder, especially when, like I say, you'll go for a period where the last 18, 24 months the growth hasn't been great in the kind of MSP telco world traditionally, and so no growth, and there's questions asked, and things get changed around. So
yeah. Absolutely. And I guess if you look back over the last 25 years of running and growing the business, how do you think you've changed as as an individual, as a leader? What are the big sort of changes of you versus back in the day?
I definitely had a lot more hair back then. It's going quickly. You learn a lot about your people. I think you learn a lot about yourself. You've got to be you become far more self-aware, I think, on how you react or act, or things that you do or you say affects other people, and it kind of has a ripple effect. So there's a kind of a lot of self-awareness, I think, that goes on over that period, especially when you're kind of a lot more hands off from the coalface. When you start, you're into everything. You're into sales, you're into delivery, you're into every area of the aspect of the business. But as you kind of grow, you've got to let go, and you've got to bring people in that you believe in and allow them to run and function independently and with autonomy. So that's been a big learning curve, and I think the biggest thing is empathy. Really, I think that's the biggest trait that you need. You need to be empathetic. You've got to understand there's different people from different backgrounds with different experiences, with different ages, different cultures, different countries, and you've got to be able to empathise with those different people and try and understand their point of view. Because if you're just so, focused and, this is how it is, I'm not going to, listen to you or accept your opinion, then I think you're on you're on a downward spiral. So yeah, empathy I think is a big one.
Yeah, definitely. I think as well, if you've created and been on a journey of growing a business, and as the sort of the founder leader, I think there is always a trap that you can get into, which is, this is my baby, this is my way. Why is everyone not as invested in me? Why are we not all still working at midnight? Because we should be growing the business, but you got to appreciate that. People are on that journey with you, but their involvement and investment of time and energy is always going to be different to the founder, right? And you'll get people that come in and match that energy, but I think you've got to appreciate that it is all different. And then if you sort of flip the lens the other way and look forward into the future, if we look in 3-4 years time, what do you think that lens looks like, and what does Infinity Group look like in 2030?
Oh, good question. So yeah, we're seeing large growth in business applications. They're the areas that we're seeing really are growing. We've got a big motion now on cross-selling and modernising infrastructure. There's obviously a lot of work to do around security as well. But thinking about how we can deliver more, more value quicker. I think people are now wanting to have something that delivers value quickly, as opposed to the traditional, wait 2 years and we'll deliver something that you may or may not like. It's very much right. Let's get minimum viable product in. Let's start delivering value as quickly as possible and build from there. And that whole SaaS platform, the whole kind of cloud ecosystem, it allows that to happen now. So I think the services are going to change very much around a kind of more agile DevOps as a service. I think will be how we land, more kind of fixed outcomes elements within that. So it could be, we'll deliver, ERP very fixed. This is exactly what we do, and there's a fixed price there. Get that delivered, and then we build on top of that with the automations and the customized workflows that we would put in, and obviously AI. We continue to invest in our systems, so we're on top of the technology that's coming down from Microsoft firsthand, and the delivery tools that we use. There's some great tools out there that we use, third parties, that help us deliver and scale consistently.
Cool. Wow, sounds like it's going to be an exciting journey through until 2025, and we're going into 2026, and I'm sure there'll be more change and more innovation that we'll all have to deal with. Rob, thanks so much for taking us through your journey and what you've been up to and what Infinity Group are doing now. Shall we dive into Microsoft Mentors quick fire round?
Go for it. Go on.
It won't be too stressful, don't worry, mate.
Yeah.
Certifications, experience, or mindset. If you had to pick one, what matters the most?
Certifications. What's the second one?
Experience or mindset?
Ooh, mindset all day long.
Yeah. This one's, I always like to see where people come on this one. It's quite an ambiguous question that you've probably never been asked before. But if you had to choose one Microsoft product or suite of products, what's your favourite one of all time?
Oh, wow. Business Central's obviously been hugely successful for us, and to go from starting a practice 4 years ago to winning Partner of the Year, I've got to say that really. But I do like Dynamics, like the whole breadth of Dynamics. It touches like every element of our business, from projects to field to the service desk and sales. Oh no, it's got to be Business Central. Has to be.
Yeah. We'll go with it. I like it. If there's one bit of advice that you could give your younger self at the start of your career, what would it be?
Try not to be all things to everyone. Try and really kind of focus, whether it's a customer, whether it's vertical, whether it's size of customer, whether it's the technology stack that you're using. Try and do that and then build. Like try and be really, really focused and then build. I think that's probably, me being neurodiverse. I think, loves a new shiny thing, and I'm quite easily kind of spread over here or over there, and I get quite excited about stuff, and certainly technology. And actually, over the years, I've realised that I need to like taper that and really kind of try and focus on some key areas and think around the strategy behind it, and kind of pull myself back. So yeah, for me, it's probably from a business point of view, don't try and do everything, and try and stay focused on a kind of the smallest kind of niche you can, and then build out from there.
Yeah. And then my final favourite tripwire question, just to see how pure play Microsoft people are on Microsoft Mentors. For your personal devices, Windows or Mac?
Oh, so personal devices, I'm Surface. I'm all Windows, but I use an iPhone. So
that's fine. Mobile devices don't count. You'll be surprised how many people come on here that are Microsoft MVPs or whatever, and then you ask them that question, they go, "Yeah, shit, sorry, Ollie, I'm using a Mac."
I'm Surface all day long. In fact, the whole business is Surface, except the marketing team, who somehow have got some kind of exception, and they use Macs. For no apparent reason anymore, because I don't know, but they use Macs. And they often moan because sometimes there are applications, some of the applications, they're not as up to date as the PCs. So.
Yeah. It's one of those things with the creative side of things, isn't it? There tends to be a leaning towards Mac with the creative world.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, we survived the quickfire round. But yeah, Rob, as I say, great to hear a bit more about your journey, a bit more about Infinity Group's journey. As always, I'll make sure that Rob and the team at Infinity Group are tagged in all of the podcast stuff. So if you want to have a dig around and find out a bit more about them, then I'm sure Rob and his team will be more than happy to jump on. And in the meantime, Rob, have a great evening, and hopefully we'll speak soon.
You too, Ollie. Thanks for having me.
Cheers. Hopefully you enjoyed this week's episode of Microsoft Mentors, the podcast. Whether you listen to us on LinkedIn Live, on YouTube, on Spotify, or wherever else you listen to your podcast, make sure you follow, like, and subscribe. Both myself, Ollie Ridley, on LinkedIn, our guests, and also the podcast. The more people that we know are listening, the more time and investment we can make into the podcast and bring more conversations with our Microsoft mentors and leaders from across the Microsoft partner ecosystem to our community. In the meantime, stay tuned and keep an eye out for next week's episode.